You are listening to Dove Valley Deep Divers with Erick Trickel
and Lance Sanderson.
Ball comes out of the hands of Newton. It's on the ground, picked up by T.J. Ward at the 4-yard line. Vaughn Miller did it again.
On Overtime Media.
Mile high hello, everybody in Broncos country. Welcome into another episode of everybody's favorite podcast of the week at least from what the group chat is saying right here, the Dove Valley Deep Divers podcast. I'm your host, Lance Sanderson, and joining me as always, my good friend and colleague. He is Mile High Huddle's senior NFL draft analyst, one and only Erick Trickel. Erick, what's going on, man? How are we doing up there in Alaska?
Doing pretty good. Fortunately, it's been a little bit warm up here, and we're not having to deal with everything that Texas is going through. And I hope anybody who's watching that is from Texas, I hope you guys are staying safe and staying warm and everything like that. And it's nice and refreshing that with the weather that we've had, especially the last couple of days, it's been not as bad as Texas, but it's been not the best weather for up here. Been very cold. Glad to be out of that snap a little bit, and things are starting to warm up. And just been very super nice. This time of year is always really pretty in Alaska. Right. Absolutely love it with the weather, the snow, all that stuff like that. But other than the weather, doing good. Super excited for being here as I always am. Everything with the draft. Super excited with stuff that's going on in outside of here with my lightsaber should be here soon. So I'm super excited for that. Yes. And yeah, just super excited about a lot of things. And of course, it all comes back to the draft.
Well, obviously and always, this is what we really do here on the Dove Valley Deep Divers is we do discuss the draft with, obviously, Erick being the senior NFL draft analyst for MileHighHuddle.com. We got some really cool stuff coming up for you guys. We already have our schedule made out all the way up to the draft. And the Friday of the draft is going to be on our show where we have everybody on like we did last year. Big, huge draft plans for everybody. We're going to have we're going to plug this here in just a few minutes as well. We're going to have one of our Super Chat superstars come on the show. We're going to have a contest about being able to come on and do one of the live mock drafts with me and Erick, where you guys are the GM, we are the scouting department, and you guys get to make the pick. We're also probably going to have Nick and Carl jump on here to do a mock draft as well. We've got some sleeper picks, a worst case scenario podcast coming up here soon. So it's going to be a lot of fun. But guys, today, before we get into this, we do have to give a shout out to our presenting sponsor, Manscaped. Guys, 2020 really sucked. It was awful. We all know 2021, not necessarily off on the right foot, but if you want to get it that way, the easiest way to do that is embrace that new year and new me mindset with Manscaped. Guys, okay, Manscaped is the best in men's below-the-waist grooming, offering precision-engineered tools for your boys and helping 2 million men around the world keep their male grooming on point. Now, guys, if you let yourself get out of hand with 2020 while you're quarantined or doing whatever, if you're locked up and can't get out and get yourself in your best place, Manscaped is here for you guys. Now, Erick, speak a little bit about what you got here from Manscaped.
Well, I have the thing that they call the shed. It's the carrying bag for it. It's actually really comes in handy to keep all your shaving equipment. Really great travel size if you do a lot of traveling and everything. And I also got the Lawnmower 300. It comes in with this nice little bag to help keep things clean. And one of the best things about this is when you go to use it, sometimes the light isn't always the best. But with this, if I can find the power button, comes with a little light on it so you can see when you're doing your little trimming stuff that you got to be doing. And it's just a nice little thing. It's very easy to use. The light, again, really comes in handy. The carrying bag, everything they have what they call the crop mop. That's very nice for and feeling down there. They have a deodorant. They have I can't remember what it's called. It's like a little revitalizer type thing. It's a spray that helps freshen things up.
Yeah, this right here.
Yes, that actually. It's just a bunch of little cool prospects that they are not prospects. Thinking of the draft. It's a bunch of cool different products that they have that just come in handy to keep yourself groomed.
Yeah, I actually have the Shears 2.0. It's a little fingernail clipper kit that's got a nail file, some tweezers, and a little nose hair trimmer and whatnot that goes in there. They have the Weed Whacker, I believe, is what they call their nose hair trimmer, the electric one that I think also has a light as well. But no, guys, the easiest way to get any of this stuff and to help yourself out, and your wife's going to love it, by the way, as well, getting yourself cleaned up and whatnot, is go to manscaped.com. Use the promo code HUDDLE. You're going to get 20% off and free shipping on anything you get at Manscaped. Again, that's go to manscaped.com, use the promo code HUDDLE for 20% off and free shipping on everything for right now. Your boys and your wife are definitely going to thank you. Happy New Year to everybody out there. Now, guys, today on the show, we have some under-the-radar prospects that the Broncos could be potentially looking at number 9. We already know the quarterback conversation is ongoing, and it has been for months, years, in fact, actually, that the Broncos need to go and upgrade the quarterback position. Obviously, this year, cornerback, the defensive back position is a big thing. We're talking about Patrick Surtain. We're talking about Caleb Farley all the time, some J.C. Horn references, Erick Stokes as well, potentially as a second-round prospect. Offensive lineman is one we're probably going to get here today. Now, Eric, speaking of those offensive linemen, who do you have at number 9 as you're probably not really the deepest sleeper, but a big under-the-radar guy for the Broncos?
Well, before we get into this, I want to let everybody know about the little competition we have going on.
Yeah, absolutely.
About it. So what it is for everybody who super chats, you guys will enter a drawing over this week and next week. All super chats, everybody who super chats will be entered in a drawing to win a chance to come on to Dove Valley Deep Divers, where we will do a mock draft. Now, what it is we always do every year. Last year, we started doing our mock drafts with you guys, the chat, as the general managers, taking a consensus on who wants to be the pick while we're the scouting department. Well, in this case, if you win this drawing, this random drawing that we're going to be doing, then you get a chance to come on the show and you get to be the general manager. You get to utilize our knowledge, very one-on-two kind of aspect about it. You get to make all the picks based off of your own thoughts, or even take advice from us, opinions from us, whatever the case may be. So to enter that, it's just got to be a super chat. Anybody who super chats is entered to win, and win that chance. And again, it's going to be over this week and next week that you guys have the chance to super chat to enter in.
This is the Overtime Podcast Network.
Well, speaking of super chats, we already got a couple coming in here. So, Mohammed, you already know you're in on this one. Like, that was one of the first names that was going to come up with a $2 super sticker. I wish we had Bawana tonight. John is actually unable to attend. He had some stuff going on, so it's just us tonight. So we're not going to be able to pull your super sticker, unfortunately. Mr. Boggins, I've recently linked up with you on Twitter a few times, and it's just great to have you on the show. Hey, why is Tevin Jenkins flying up rankings here lately, Eric?
Simple factor is he's really good. I've been a big fan of Tevin Jenkins for a while, ever since watching the running back whose name escapes me at the moment.
Chubaba.
Yeah, ever since watching him, he's always stood out, and I just really like him. He's got the versatility to play either side of it, versatility to play in multiple schemes. Like, just a big fan. He's super good. He's reliable. I don't think his ceiling is super extremely high, but he's one of those guys that if he develops in certain areas, he can be a guy that you have starting for 10, 15 years, and you are perfectly fine with that. So I think that it's just now that people are starting to catch up, so he's kind of flying up rankings a little bit. But I think in the NFL, he's always been pretty highly thought of. Yeah.
No, I agree with that. He's a mauler in the running game. He's absolutely so much fun to watch. He played right tackle primarily at Oklahoma State, and he actually is fantastic as a pass protector as well. Pretty slept on, honestly, and I don't think that he might crack the tail end of the first round. And actually, that's a pretty good possibility. But if he's there for the Broncos at number 40 overall, that would be a big direction that I would like the Broncos to go in, especially with the Juwan James situation. And this is a big part of this conversation leading into tonight as well, is what the Broncos do with Juwan James leading up to the draft. They have the opportunity to use a post-June 1st cut on him and split out the dead money hit of his contract over this year and also next year. So it's going to pretty much cut that in half. Not quite. I'm not exactly sure the full number.
It keeps him from having a $19 million dead money cap hit this year to only $13 million this year and six and change next year. Right, so it's the same amount of cap hit. It's just split up over 2 years.
Exactly, and that was my bad for wording it incorrectly. I wasn't sure if it cut it in half or if there was an offset on part of that money or not. Yeah. Regardless, now if the Broncos do decide to pull the trigger on that and they need to go out and get an offensive tackle, Eric, options at number 9, man.
Well, obviously, everybody that has their attention at number 9, they're talking about Caleb Farley, they're talking about Patrick Surtain, they're talking about Micah Parsons, they're talking about some of these edge rushers like Azeez Ojulari, maybe Kwity Paye, guys like that. Those are the guys getting all the attention. Now, I'm sitting here and I'm looking at some of these guys and looking at Denver, and especially with Mike Kles's report or not necessarily report, but his opinion that Juwan James won't be back. It's kind of like, well, if that's the case, and offensive line can kind of become a need here. So I'm looking at 2 in particular. I'm looking at my guy who I've been super high on for a long time in Rashaan Slater, And another guy who I'm really super high on, I actually just recorded part of his Finding Broncos draft profile just before going live on this, actually. And that's Elijah Vera Tucker out of USC. I think both of them can play tackle. I think they have the versatility to move inside a guard. I think both of them can play all 5 spots on your offensive line, though you don't really want them at center just because it's the least value to the positions. And they're so good at guard and tackle. So you want them out there where they're better at, I guess, would be the best way to put it. Better value, I guess. That would be the best way. So I'm looking at those two guys. I mean, again, it just comes down to their versatility. It's not just positional versatility, it's scheme versatility. Yep. Everybody knows that the Broncos coaching staff might be changed next year, but you still got to work with the scheme that you currently run. So getting scheme versatile guys, that is a big factor I'm pretty sure, for George Payton, it's going to be anyways. So getting a guy like Elijah Vera Tucker, Rashawn Slater, who can come in, start at right tackle if Jawan James is out, or even maybe they view Dalton Reisner as the future at right tackle. Well, then here you go. You can put those guys in at left guard. You just have so many options with what you do with it. If injuries happen, you have even more options with what you want to do. And I don't want people to sit there and shrug this off because, we just got done seeing a guard to tackle experiment in Elijah Wilkinson. Rashawn Slater and Elijah Vera Tucker have more ability to play tackle than Elijah Wilkinson ever had. His big issue is that his feet are heavy and slow. That's not an issue with Slater or Vera Tucker.
No, Vera Tucker actually played tremendously at left tackle for USC this last year. And Rashawn Slater's played, like you said, all over the offensive line. He played that center position. He played either guard position, right or left tackle. And he's a great athlete. He's a big mover in space, just mean, nasty out as a run blocker, really good pass sets. Hand placement is tremendous. He does a really good job of not getting outside the shoulder frame or the framework of your chest plate, getting outside the shoulders and grabbing and stuff like that. Some of the issues that we saw with Garrett Bowles early in his career that he got cleaned up over this last season and whatnot. Rashawn Slater is arguably the top offensive lineman in this class. And I want to say this specifically because there's a distinction that you guys got to understand here. Rashawn Slater is not the top pure tackle in the class. I think that goes to Penei Sewell. But at the same time, as far as a full offensive lineman, because he can play so many different positions, the versatility with him is so huge. He's going to have my number one ranking at the offensive line, all 5 offensive line positions, just because of that. Again, Vera Tucker, same thing. He played in guard, moved outside the left tackle, held up very well, a very good athlete. I think he needs to work a little bit more on some his hand placement and run blocking and not getting overextended and leaning too much far forward and getting off balance, driving forward vertically. But also at the same time, he has enough aggression and enough well, I don't necessarily know how to put this. So he's very aggressive, but he's also very nuanced, and he does a good job of getting angular attack and getting out in front of guys and pushing them down the field. But that's the big problem, is sometimes he'll get out over the top of his toes too much, and he'll fall forward and end up on the ground. It's not a big issue, but it does happen to him. Now, before I get into mine, I'm going to go get back to the chat here really fast. Michael DePasquale coming in here early says Malcolm Brown and Eric are probably drinking buddies since they live up there in Alaska. I love that. That was so funny. That came in right before we went live. I laughed my butt off at that. Gavin Hole, what's up, man? How we doing?
We gotta say, give a shout out to Malcolm Brown, the fellow Alaskan here, and we're glad that we're your favorite pod. I mean, we always appreciate that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and as he jumps in here as well, anybody in Texas, buy a generator, guys. Go out there and get yourself taken care of. It's awful cold, and we don't want to leave anybody out there in the dark or in the cold. And speaking of leaving somebody out in the dark and in the cold, Garrett Hole jumping in here with a $20 super chat. Thank you for joining us, man. We appreciate that. What up? That freaking profile picture. Great. Oh,
that's a good one.
Is that a playoff of Gavin? Come back to us on this one. Is that a playoff of Smoking Jay Cutler, where I just don't care? You got to come back to me on that one. I love it. Muhammad jumping in here with another $2 super. Great to see you, Muhammad. Great to see everybody in here. We've got the typical usuals, like Black Knight joining us tonight. James Campbell, Robert Kitchens, Jay Kozad, Stephen Beckham. What's going on, guys? Appreciate to have everybody in here joining the Dove Valley Deep Divers podcast. Now, I'm going to go ahead and go into mine. One that I actually did a mock draft earlier today on the Draft Network, and put that up on my Twitter account at Sanderson MHH. Guys, go out and check that out. Joseph Osai, the edge defender from the University of Texas. This is a guy that I had in our draft primer a few weeks ago, where we had everybody join up on the show and give 5 of my guys for the Broncos at number 9. Now, the thing is here, this edge class is really weird because there's not a true elite, high-profile guy. There's not a Nick Bosa. There's not a Myles Garrett. There's no one like that in this class. It's going to be a for sure top 10 or top 5 pick. Osai is one of the guys that I really like, and the reason why is because he's very versatile in what he can do. He's good with his hand in the dirt. He's good with his hands up as a standing off ball linebacker. He can also drop back into coverage very well. In fact, in 2019 tape, he played primarily off ball as a coverage linebacker. So he's got that ability, and that's something I really like with him. If you're not going to go cornerback or potentially offensive lineman here, obviously the Von Miller situation has to come into this a little bit as well, because you're probably, yes, edge is definitely a need. If Von Miller's not here, you definitely need to go and address the edge position. I would much rather see the Broncos trade back right here than take Osai at 9. But at the same time, he's a great scheme fit. He's versatile enough to be able to do what Vic Fangio wants him to do. And he's also the perfect fit opposite of Bradley Chubb, because yes, it's a 3-4 over scheme where you're going to have a guy with his hand in the dirt, 3 down linemen, a standing off ball linebacker that needs to be able to, edge defender, I should say, that needs to be able to drop into coverage and move around as a fluid athlete. Osai is not the greatest athlete ever, but at the same time, he still has enough coverage ability and the awareness, the mental awareness, understanding his landmarks, getting back into depth and drop backs into coverage that he can actually succeed. And honestly, if Von Miller is still in tow with the Broncos and they still have Bradley Chubb, if they figure out that option with Von Miller, I would play Joseph Osai off ball like early in his career, because I think that he has enough ability to be able to do that. Another guy, and I don't necessarily want to just continue to pound the offensive lineman here, is Christian Darason from Virginia Tech. This is another absolutely Iron Man offensive lineman, big, wicked, nasty run blocker, really good, smooth pass protector as well, great hand placement. He's actually... Honestly, I would take him over Elijah Vera-Tucker just because as a pure tackle prospect, he does a little bit better job of keeping himself on balance. And it's a nitpicky thing to me. It's not like the greatest differentiation. Vera-Tucker is going to get that as far as a versatile offensive lineman. But as far as a pure tackle prospect, if you're looking for a pure tackle prospect, Darason has it to me just a little bit more than Vera-Tucker.
This is the Overtime Podcast Network.
Well, I don't disagree. I think that as a pure tackle prospect, yeah, because Darason is just a pure tackle.
Yes,
I don't think he has the versatility to move inside. I don't think he has the versatility to play anywhere besides right or left tackle. So you're not wrong there. I just still would take Elijah Vera-Tucker because he's a lot more versatile.
Yep.
But we did get Gavin Hall did come back to us before we get back to it. He said, I just found it. That's pretty good, Gavin. You're definitely up there in the top 2 for my favorite profile picks, along with Base Case, who hopefully jumps in because every time I just get a kick out of it. And CC, welcome. Say finally catching live. Hope you all are doing great. Hey, we hope you're doing great as well, and we hope you're having a good early. What is it? Spring? For me, it's still winter. Whatever the season may be where you are at, we're hoping you have a good one, having a good time, and just getting super excited for the draft as we are. But anyways, for your guys, I think that I really like Joseph Osai, and what I'm going to say is going to make it come off like I don't. But my issue for me is that right now, when I went back and watched him just a couple weeks ago, it was, what is he? I don't think he has the traits to be a full-time off-ball. I'm not sure he has the traits to be a full-time edge. He's a hybrid early on. He's that Leonard Floyd type guy, but even then, you still have so much technical work with him. I really wouldn't be surprised if he fell to round 2, and if he ended up being probably the 5th, 6th, or 7th edge rusher taken. Because there's just so many questions with him, with where to play him, what you do with him, all this work that needs to be done. And it's hard because I like him. I'm a big fan of what he brings. I think he's got a really high ceiling. Well, not a really high ceiling. I think he's got a pretty high ceiling. And I think his floor is pretty low. I think at the very least, you're getting a very solid rotational player. But that floor is just a matter of, is that really something that you're going to bet on and risk a first-round pick on? And then Darason, to me, he's my number 2 or my number 3 offensive tackle. I have Slater as a tackle. And I think that outside of Penei Sewell, then it's really close between Slater and Darason for me.
Yeah.
And Elijah Vera-Tucker, as I mentioned earlier, is I can see him at tackle, but he's definitely, I think he's a guy who's better off inside a little bit. and I think that you'd be kind of stretching for him outside. I think he could do it, but I think he'd be better inside. So they both are really good picks, and we have actually had a couple of comments in here about it. And let me go back. I know somebody asked about Mac Jones early, Michael McCorkle Jones, as we like to call him here on Dove Valley Deep Divers.
He is.
I don't think McCorkle will be an option for Denver at 9. Maybe if they trade down, maybe in the second round. My thing is that what we've seen and what we've heard is that the Broncos, they either want to upgrade Drew Lock as a starter or upgrade over Drew Lock as a starter or upgrade over Jeff Driscoll as the backup. And if they're not that upgrade over Lock, they're not going to go all in on it. And I don't think Mac Jones is a clear upgrade over him to where they're going to sit there and be like, yeah, we got to throw our 9th overall pick on him. I don't see it. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe come draft time, McCorkle ends up being the pick. But again, I just don't see it. I think that if he fell to the second round, they could be like, all right, we could bet on his potential to possibly be a starter. We have the weapons around him who can sit there and make him be solid, help with the issues with his arm strength, help with the issues of his athletic limitations, have him be smarter, or upgrade the smartness at the quarterback position. And at the very least, we're upgrading Jeff Driscoll. Although at this point, I think my daughter would be an upgrade over Jeff Driscoll. But that's how I'm looking at it there. I do think that and I've seen a lot of this is there as well. Gavin Hull mentioned it. I know Dylan Von Arx mentioned it. I flashed it earlier about a trade down. I don't think Denver's picking at 9. And I don't think it's because they're trading the pick to Deshaun Watson, as another comment said. I think it's because they're trading down. Gut feeling, I just don't think that they're going to be there at 9.
Well, a big thing with this here is that this is hard to say because every draft has their own quirks and kinks and stuff like that, guys. And you got to understand here, there are drafts where there's really good defensive talent, but there's not very, very good defensive talent at the top of the draft. This is one of those cases. Or there might be a very deep offensive tackle class because there's a lot of options, but there's no true first-round talents. So go back to like a couple of years ago, even to the Garrett Bowles draft, there was really a lot of questions about some of those guys being, first round tackles, Garrett Bowles, Ryan Ramczyk, Cam Robinson, and so on and so forth. So this class is really weird because there is a lot of high quality defensive talent, but at the same time, where the Broncos are picking at number 9 overall, yeah, you've got Farley, you've got Surtain, but if you would have put them even a few years ago, trying to think off the top of my head of a good one, regardless, Farley might be like cornerback 5 in some other classes. He's not going to be cornerback 1 or 2 like he is this year. It's just the talent in the defensive aspect is more in the mid rounds. It's hard to project them being those guys, especially with the edge class. Again, going back to Osai, going to Azeez Ojulari, guys like that. With the defensive talent being towards the later end of the first round, it would not surprise me because the Broncos, they could take an offensive tackle at 9. They potentially could go out and get a quarterback at 9 if that's something that they so choose to do. But if they're going to look for the defensive talent here, I would almost much rather trade back. And there's a question here or a comment here. But let me grab this. And I can't remember who it was from, but Gavin actually coming back in here. He says trade back and get Eric Stokes. Absolutely. Like there's no problem with that for me. Trade back, get some more ammo in this class, really rebuild this defense because the defensive class from say 25 overall to like 105 to like the top 100, somewhere around in there. That 75 player stretch is where the best premium talent in this defensive class is at. So that to me is the best option. And Eric, I actually do agree with you. Now I'm going to grab one more thing here really fast. Trevor Sandell jumping in on Facebook. He actually reached out to me the other day and he actually got it right here. He says, I grew up watching Denver with my family, so my blood runs orange and blue. I wanted to ask a question. We live in Kansas, where the majority are Chiefs fans. Lately, my son Kai has been teased for supporting the Broncos. Would you do a shout out for him? It would make his year. So absolutely, Kai. Stick in there, buddy. Keep your chin up. The brighter days are on the future. This Broncos team is turning around quickly. Trevor, thank you for jumping in. Like I said, just jump in and we'll shout him out. Absolutely. You guys have a great rest of your weekend. Enjoy the rest of the show. Thank you all for joining us on the Dove Valley Deep Divers podcast. Chase Choyson coming in here on YouTube. Why would we draft a tackle when we have Juwan James? Eric,
he added a JK. Yeah, JK just a few comments later.
Okay, I missed that. I apologize for that. I was going to say, we kind of just talked about this. Mr. Boggins jumping in here. Pokemon evolution chart. Mac Jones is the primary. The second tier is Daniel Jones, and Joe Burrow is the fully evolved version. I mean, it makes sense. It definitely makes sense.
Not too far off. Did we get Mr. Boggins' super chat?
No, we haven't yet. I was actually
going he came out with the $5 donation. Thank you, Mr. Boggins. We appreciate that. And he says, I see Pay or Surtain link to the Broncos at 9 consistently. I just wonder how well they would fit in Fangio's scheme. Thoughts? I'm not going to talk about Surtain. I've made my thoughts on that well known, and I basically get told to shut up. Basically, I know that the Broncos might be looking at making a scheme change, but they still got to draft for what they currently have and try to find scheme versatile players. I don't think either of those guys are scheme versatile enough for George Payton to be like, all right, this is a guy that can fit now, and he's a guy who can fit multiple schemes early on. I think it limits him what he can look for next year if they do move on from Vic Fangio. And I don't think they fit what Vic Fangio wants to do. I think Pay is a strictly 4-3 end, playing that in a 3-point stance as that 7 technique. And I just don't see that in Denver. And then Surtain, I see as a press man corner, maybe can play a little bit of bail. I don't like his movement to be off. I think he can mirror well enough, but his click and close, his ability to flip and turn, and not flip and turn, his ability to just stop on a dime when he's needed. I don't see it in him to fit in an off zone. And again, as the first one I made, is neither one of them scheme versatile, which is what you're looking for first of all in the case of George Payton.
Well, and that's a big thing. We'll touch into this here in just a second, but that's a big thing with me when I'm looking at players, especially in the draft, is how versatile are they? Can they play in multiple different positions? Can they play in multiple different schemes? Can they do pretty much anything that you're asking of them? Because coaching situations are also volatile. And I'm not saying anything about Vic Fangio necessarily. I think the Broncos need to hold on to Vic Fangio because he actually has his team trending in the right direction. I do like Vic Fangio a lot. However, there are questions about whether he's going to be around because the Broncos do have George Payton coming in, and there are concerns about the Broncos team right now. And there are rumors of there being a playoff mandate for Vic Fangio. He needs to get this team to the playoffs this year. So it's kind of tough. If that does happen to be the case, Vic Fangio runs a very specific skill set scheme in which his players need to be able to do what he is asking of them. Now,
real quick, somebody pointed this out into the chat, and I just got to point out how funny it is. But Oscar says, why does Google say Erick Stokes is 47-year-old? I totally double-checked that. I do. It does, and I don't know why. Like, it's just funny to me. Like, yeah, it says 47 years old.
Yeah, we're gonna need someone to go and fact check that. I think he's 21 right now, honestly.
I think he's 21. And real quick, I just want to touch on this a little bit more in depth. Why draft for Vic's scheme? Vic system is going to be gone next year. First of all, you don't know he's going to be gone. No one does. It's just a likely scenario at this point. And the thing is that you never want to fire your coach. It's just like you never want to replace your quarterback. You hope every quarterback you draft is going to be the guy. Sometimes they don't. But you want your coach to be successful just as you want your quarterback to be successful. If Vic Fangio was 100% gone next year, he would have been fired this year. There would be no reason to keep him around. Yep. None whatsoever, because you're only hurting the rest of your team if you keeping a coach that isn't going to be around much longer beyond this year. So you still want him to be successful. So you're still drafting guys that he wants, guys that fit his scheme, guys that can do what he wants them to do.
Yep.
But as I said, is you want to cover that up with scheme versatile players in case you do make that change. Caleb Farley is more scheme versatile, I think, than Patrick Surtain. I think Erick Stokes is more scheme versatile than Patrick Surtain. And it's nothing against Patrick Surtain. I think he's a great prospect.
Yeah, no.
He's my number 2 corner. I love what he brings. It's just he's stuck into a certain scheme. You want him playing press man, and that's about it.
This is the Overtime Podcast Network.
He can play press man, and if he is going to play off, you want him to play cover 3 because he doesn't have that click and close ability to drive on routes. So you can have him play that cover 3 and get deep and get vertical because he has the athleticism to do it. I mean, at Alabama, they do that a lot. They'll run press man, but then they'll back off and make it look like off man and turn it into a cover 3 and drop everybody deep. So to me, that's the biggest thing. And like I was trying to say earlier, you want to have those scheme versatile guys because if you're drafting Surtain who doesn't fit this scheme and you're drafting to look into the future, that hurts the rest of the club anyways. Everyone wants to preach this continuity with, I'm going to throw out an example here. Everyone wants to say continuity. Drew Lock needs some time to learn and grow within the system. Well, if you're going into this intention with this draft class to not pick anybody that fits Vic Fangio's scheme in the intention of firing him after this year, where's the continuity there? Like you have to have that. Like you want to preach it out one side of your mouth, but then say, well, Vic Fangio is going to get fired this year. You can't have both sides of this coin. It's one or the other. So you draft to fit whatever scheme you're potentially going to have. And as Eric has very, very well laid out multiple different times, Surtain is a more specific kind of a scheme fit. Joseph Osai, to me, is a versatile guy. He can play and do a lot of different roles. He's not going to be primarily an off-ball linebacker. He's not going to be a guy with his hand in the dirt. He's not going to be a standing wide nine edge defender. He can do all of those things. So that's, to me, what gives him a bump over someone like an Azeez Ojulari, who I think is versatile enough to do all that stuff too. He's just not great in coverage right yet, and he's still got some time to develop on that. But versatility is huge, especially in any prospect evaluation. You have to be able to be versatile and move within the scheme because, again, coaching schemes and coaching situations are extremely volatile. It can end at the drop of the hat. I mean, Bill O'Brien's not exactly the greatest example here, but he went to the playoffs and won the division 4 years in a row and got fired this last year because he was terrible. And now you've got a bad roster that has no direction because what is the scheme? There's no scheme there. There was all specific scheme fit players, and now you have to try to figure out a way to work around that. And that's another big reason why Deshaun Watson really wants out of there, is because there's no direction at all. So keep that in mind, guys. When we talk about the versatility with players and prospects, you have to understand that there's a bigger picture here as well. It's not just for this year, and it's not just for the future. There is some of both in that as well.
And I wanted to grab this comment earlier. Mr. Boggin said, I said trade down during the round table and none of you had my back. I don't remember much of the round table. That was too long ago, and it was a long, and Lance ranted and raved and
kind of like
about 10 minutes of the podcast just talking. But anyways, yeah, at the time, like just a little while ago, I was very much on don't trade down, kind of stay put. But the more when I go back, so I have a process when it comes to scouting, and I always go back and watch guys just another game or two, and sometimes my opinions will change a little bit. I was very big on Caleb Farley, on different edge rushers at 9, but more I watched, the more it came, and watching that extra game, it's like I'm not really sure if 9's the best value for them. I think trading down is. I really like the idea of trading down to 20 to 25, getting Erick Stokes, and seeing what happens, getting an edge rusher with your second pick, which leads me to another thing. So, yeah, I've definitely come around on trading down. It's just the NFL, one thing with opinions, information, things like that, NFL stands for not for long. Things always change. Things are always fluid. Yep. And then about the edge, Andrew Switzer came in and said, I know edge may not be a huge need. To me, it is. But what does everyone think of Jason Owe? I love him.
Yep.
He's one of my draft crushes. He's an athletic freak. He made Bruce Feldman's freak list. Supposedly runs a 4.3 40 at 260 pounds and 6'5". I'd love to see the video of that and see the confirmation of that, see if it's actually true. But if he is that big, that athletic, that big of a freak, man, he could do a lot of things for him with on your defense. I think it's a huge need because Malik Reed is a free agent after this season. Bradley Chubb, you have to make a decision on his 5th-year option. And Von Miller, Denver wants – word's coming out that Denver wants to try to extend him. They don't want to back at his current cost. They want to lower the cost and by extending him, or they may not pick up the option or move him in other ways, like a trade or something like that, is – you got to find edge. You got to find edge help. That is, I think that this year's Super Bowl showed that if you want your best chance to slow down Patrick Mahomes, you got to be reliable at coverage, but you got to get the pressure up front with as few pass rushers as possible.
Yes, absolutely. And another thing to add on to that there is the fact that Jeremiah Tauchi was on a 1-year deal this year. So you have 3 guys that have questions as far as their future, and a 4th guy that's not even under contract at edge defender. So you have to pick up at least somebody. In this class, there's a lot of really quality guys. You got Shaka Toney, Quincy Roche out of Miami. You've got William Bradley King out of Duke. He's going to be a guy at the later rounds. You can draft and develop him. Again, the top end guys, Osai Ojulari. You've got Gregory Rousseau. So, Eric, here's another question I saw from somebody in here was, would you rather draft Joseph Osai at number 9 overall, or would you rather take Gregory Rousseau?
Ooh, at number 9 overall, I'd probably take Gregory Rousseau over Joseph Osai just because he has such a high ceiling.
Yeah.
He's got such a low floor, but that boom or bust aspect of it, it's a huge risk, but it's a risk I'd be willing to take. Obviously, neither is ideal for me. But for edge rusher, for a guy who can get after the quarterback the way he does, as athletically gifted as he is, as well as he uses his length, I think that, he would be a really good fit. I think that he can come in and compete right away and provide Denver the help that they need. And Chase Wellner came in asking with the $5 donation saying, would it be a reach to draft any corner other than Farley at 9? As I was just kind of talking about, I think it'd be kind of reach to draft Farley at 9 even. None of these corners for me are top 10 players.
Yep.
I don't think that I haven't really settled my board yet. Just going by my grades off the top of my head, I don't think Farley actually falls in my top 15 even. I think he falls like right around 17 or 18. But I definitely got to get that sorted and situated. Other than him, it would be I could live with it depending on what else they do in the draft, what else they do in free agency. But any other corner would definitely be a reach. Patrick Surtain, if it wasn't at number 9, if Denver traded down and still managed to get him, I'd live with it because then you can sit there. It's not as high of a value placed on him. And so the risk is a little bit mitigated because it's not as high of a draft pick. Erick Stokes, again, I mentioned earlier about trading down to 20 to 25, maybe a little bit lower than that. And then other than that, I'd be looking at second round for corners.
Right. Joey Badass coming in here on Twitch, and got to shout out all of our beautiful Twitch viewers that come in every single night. Thank you, Joey, for joining the Dove Valley Deep Divers podcast. Not picking at 9 is a mistake. If we don't get a veteran corner at all, we will have no one but Callahan as the only true starter. We need a cornerback way more than any other position. And as Eric just kind of got done lining out there, Erick Stokes is a guy that actually can be a legit starting cornerback, and he can play inside and outside. This is another one of those guys that's scheme versatile. He can play inside. He's position versatile as well. He's got good length, great athleticism. He's good in a press. He's better off the ball. I think he's got great hip fluidity. He can drop back in a back pedal. He can turn and run with guys. Erick Stokes is definitely an option. You don't have to pick him at 9 though. And you can drop back to the 19, 20, 21, 22, somewhere around in that area and feel really good about taking an Erick Stokes. And again, if Vic Fangio is gone after the 2021 season, Erick Stokes can play in man. He can play in off zone. He can play press. He can do pretty much anything you want him to do. That's a guy that can be a starter. Now, as far as a veteran cornerback option goes, there's a couple out there right now. There's you've got Kevin Johnson from Cleveland is an option there. You've got William Jackson III from Cincinnati. He's a really good option there. The pipe dream one that I don't think necessarily is the greatest idea. Maybe you can get him for a year and then flip him over to a safety if you got him like on a 3-year deal would be a Patrick Peterson. What you would do with Patrick
Peterson is you'd cut bait with Kareem Jackson, sign Patrick Peterson, and put him in Kareem Jackson's role.
Yeah, and then you draft Richie Grant to put behind him to learn because that's exactly what you need him to do. There's multiple different ways to skin a cat, guys. I don't know if that's a Wyoming saying or if there's somebody else that said there are multiple ways to skin a cat. It's not only one direct option. And drafting a cornerback at 9, yeah, it makes you feel good on the inside. But if he's not really the number 9 overall pick, if he's not a top 10 player, that might be considered a reach. However, as I was trying to lay out earlier for you guys, this defensive class, the meat of it is actually like the better value for the cornerbacks is from 20 to like 45. That area right around in there. You got Greg Newsome out of Northwestern, who's a great prospect, good scheme fit as well. I like him a lot. Maybe going back a little bit further than that, I don't think that Asante Samuel Jr. from Florida State's a scheme fit, but I like the player. You've got a Tyson Campbell from Georgia as well. There's multiple different players at the cornerback position you can get later down the road in this draft and still feel good about them stepping in and being a day one starter. And let's not sleep on Michael Ojemudia either, guys. Like he still exists. You've got a saying Bassey who's going to come back from that torn ACL. Bryce Callahan is probably the question mark there, really. But, I mean, you need a veteran cornerback and you need a legit draft option. And if you get him on the first 2 days, you're going to get a high-quality player. It just doesn't have to be at number 9 overall.
So I just want to say real quick, the saying up here is there's more than one way to skin a polar bear. Just do it before it skins you.
Yes, do it before it skins you, as always.
Speaking of Alaska, Malcolm Brown came in with a $5 donation saying, which teams have offensive systems similar to Shermer's and will be competing for the same type of players? These type of questions are always interesting because opinions around the NFL change.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that, while I may not like Patrick Surtain as a scheme fit for Denver, Denver might. how teams view what fits their scheme varies. So even if there are other teams, and there are plenty of teams out there that run the similar inside zone running game with a spacing game as a spacing passing game that likes to attack deep a little bit, there's a lot of teams that like to run that. It's not, I don't want to say it's a simple, but it's a common type of offense.
Bruce Arians.
Yeah, Bruce Arians is like that. Like, there's just so many of them. But what may not be what scheme fit to one guy, maybe to another. Even though their systems are pretty much the same, just because they value traits differently.
Yep.
And like, for one thing for me, and we actually typically before we go live, we'd sit around, we watch a little bit of tape together. And today we were watching corners, and there's one corner that I absolutely loved, and it's Elijah Molden out of Washington, because even when the play is on the opposite side of the field, he's always running basically full speed to go make a play. Then we watch another corner who he just kind of would jog around. Now, if they both fit the same scheme, I may gravitate more towards the one because, hey, he's always going full head on into the run, even when it's against them. Whereas Lance or someone else who with another team may go for the other guy because of a different trait that he has that they just prefer. So it's always hard to say who's competing for the same type of players. I think the easiest ones to do are anybody that runs an outside zone. They're looking for smaller, more athletic, technical, or technicians on the offensive line. That's probably the easiest one to say that that's going to be what they're looking for.
Right. So for an example here, for an example here, you've got Deontay Brown for the offensive guard for the Alabama Crimson Tide. He's for a guy his size, he actually moves very well, but he's more of a power runner guy because he's a mauler. He works so well in a phone booth. He can move around and pull. He does a really good job pulling, but he's not a lateral movement guy. He's more like, I'm going to drop a hip and then turn and run. He's not a lateral movement guy, technician with his hands, stuff like that. He's a mauler in the running game. So he's not going to fit that outside zone running scheme, more or less. Yeah, he probably can do it, but just for an example, that's not his best trait. His best trait is to drive forward vertically and get into somebody's face and just beat the hell out of them. And that's what he's going to do the best. So you're going to look for a team like, let's go back to the Oakland Raiders circa 2007, where they had Darren McFadden and they were running straight power game. That's the kind of offensive lineman you want for him. Now, for another example of a smaller, more shifty offensive lineman, let's see here, like a Chris Cooper would actually be a good example. A former Bronco that's a guy that can run the outside zone. Dalton Reisner can run outside zone because he's got enough athleticism to be able to do that, to move laterally and still be able to work with his hands and create those kind of running lane angles by using more technique than just straight power. There's a lot of different ways to look at it. And specifically to the offensive side, you can make a wide receiver. This is going to seem kind of hot takey and really dumb, but at the same time, you can wide receivers run routes. You might want a certain specific kind of a guy. You might need an X receiver or a Z receiver, a slot receiver, something like that. You need a quick jitterbug kind of a guy to run quick slant routes. You can find those guys all over the place. Wide receiver schemes and passing concepts, they're all relatively the same. Do you want more scheme fits on the interior of the offensive lineman? And then for coverage schemes is the biggest thing. Those are the real big differences there.
With wide receivers, you're not so much looking for scheme fits. You're looking for complementary skill sets.
Yep.
Couple questions here that I wanted to grab real quick. Gavin Hall asked about what's your guys' thoughts on the edge from Oklahoma. Ronnie Perkins, I like him. I've heard there's some off-field stuff that's kind of questioning. I think second round, not quite top 50, but top 75, so 50 to 75, 50 to 80, somewhere around there. Nick Kendall actually had a tweet on that I think he said 50 to 85, I think is what he put.
Yeah.
I'd be fine with that. And Spencer Monroe comes and says, I want us to draft Wyatt Hubert if he drops to the third or fourth round. He will be a beast.
A beast with T-Rex arms.
If he could stretch out his arms about an extra 4 inches, you just don't see successes in the NFL as an edge rusher with 30-inch arms.
No,
it just doesn't happen. It's hard to be successful. If he's there in the fourth or fifth round, I wouldn't take him. I wouldn't touch him in the draft personally. I might take a shot as an undrafted free agent, but he's got a motor. But you got to have that length for it. At some point, length does become an issue. I saw a question about Levi on Reiki. I think, I don't know how to say his name, out of Washington. Todd Ossendorf has it. He says he really likes him. I like him, just not for Denver. I think that he's more of a traditional 4-3-3 tech that can just shoot up the middle and get quick pressures. Don't like him that much against the run, though.
No, I agree with you. He's a one gap penetrator, and you need to have some two gap ability to play in Vic Fangio's scheme on the defensive line, especially at the 3-tech position. Like you want a good 5-tech that can be like a Shelby Harris, for example, a guy that is a good one gap penetrator. But you need a 0-tech nose tackle like a Mike Purcell that can be a penetrator, but also has enough ass in his game to sit there and hold the point of attack in 2-gap. That means you're holding on to a guy in front of you, and you have both gaps on either side of him. That's a 2-gap player. A 1-gap player is a guy that's going to shoot around off of one shoulder and plug that single gap. Onwuzurike is more of that single gap kind of a player. He just doesn't necessarily quite fit here. I do like the player, though. That's another thing. I understand where you're coming from, and he would be a great addition if he had some more versatility to play that 5 technique and to play that interior pass rusher role with. Absolutely, he potentially could. There's no doubt that he has the ability to do that, just not quite there. Now, this next comment here from Paul, super chat here. Thank you for that, Paul. One of the biggest fans of the show. Paul's been around for a long time, over a year now. I can see Peyton keeping Vic to finish the contract due to ownership flux and money. Unless the wheels fall off, trade down to number 22 is the number one goal. Not sure off the top of my head who has the number 22 overall pick. You're probably going to get a very similar haul, maybe a little bit more than what the Broncos got in the Noah Fant trade. So going back to 2019, where they dropped from number 10 to number 20 and got a first, a third, and a future third, I think is what they got from Pittsburgh, and where they took Noah Fant there. I would really hope that the Broncos could get a future first-round pick in that, and then potentially make some big waves if they don't go in the quarterback market this year. You have 2 first-round picks next year, depending on how Drew Lock plays, and if he does take that next step or whatever veteran hedge competition comes in. You can go all in on like a Sam Howell out of North Carolina, Spencer Rattler maybe out of Oklahoma. I do like the idea. The trade down, again, we were talking about this, the better part of the defensive class starts around that 20 to 25 area anyways. That's where the value is, guys. So it's a valuation or valuation. So how do you evaluate a player and how do you value them? You evaluate the player by what he can do. What value does he have? Benjamin Albright is pounding this right now. The value of this defensive class is 25 to about 75, 80, 90, maybe even 100. So that's about where you want to be looking at for the defensive players. And I agree with that. Trade down. Let's see here. Let me grab another couple of comments.
I just want to say about Spencer Rattler, no thanks. Just no thanks. Like he's like Johnny Manziel on steroids, but without the drug issues. I've heard nothing but bad things about him, dealing with him and his personality. I'm not super high on next year's quarterback class anyways. Desmond Ritter, he's QB1.
Yeah, I know you've been on Desmond Ritter for the longest time. Big, tall, good athlete, had really good arm talent. Man, he's so much fun to watch throw the ball.
And it's not like he's a great prospect either. It's just I'm not a big fan of Sam Howell. I think he's an all right prospect. I don't see a guy when I watch him. I don't see a guy who's going to be great in the NFL. I don't like Kedon Slovis. I don't like Spencer Rattler. I like him on the field, but off the field, no way. I'm trying to think of other names out there. I know there's another guy, Brock Purdy, but he's a late round guy. I mean, obviously things can change, but it's just based off what I've seen now. JT Daniels, he's another one. I do like him. But there's a lot of these guys that's going to depend on what they do this next season. There was one other comment here that I wanted to get real quick, but the chat kind of moved on me quite a bit, and I can't remember. Really big.
I did have one really fast that I wanted to grab if I can get back to where it was at, and it was actually from Nasruddin Dies here, and he has thoughts on our Darius Washington. He went nuts in the chat here, guys. Nasruddin had been joining us for a long time. Thank you for joining us once again, guys. Our Darius Washington from TCU, his teammate Trevon Moehrig is really – I have Richie Grant as safety 1 in this class just because that's my dude. That's my guy. We stand Grant in this household. But Trevon Moehrig has equal scheme versatility. I like him better as a single high free safety than more of a middle of the field open cover 2 kind of a guy, because I really value his athleticism and his range and his ability to run sideline to sideline at the deep safety position. And also, I love the fact that he is a great high quality punt returner. Our Darius Washington, though, there's a lot of people that are talking about our Darius Washington as what's his name? Tyrann Mathieu, kind of a clone. He's a guy that lines up all over the defensive scheme. He can play deep. He can play in the slot. He can play on the outside. Physical guy, a little bit smaller, but at the same time, he does very good with his technique and tackling, very aggressive, great angular attack, very good awareness. This guy is actually really fun to watch. There was another couple of them here as well. And Eric, I'll let you grab. If I know he had Hamzah Nasirildeen, and there was another. Andre Cisco from Syracuse.
Hamzah Nasirildeen, I think he's got some scheme facility. I think it would be a lot better if he was more consistent with his reads. He seems to have some solid range, but it's hard to gauge really because he can be so late with his reads. And then Andre Cisco, I like him as a cover 2 guy, splitting the field deep. Basically doing what Fangio does. I like him in multiple roles of that. Not a guy you want down in the box. That's about the only role he can't really fill. I like him. I wish that he didn't get hurt this year, though.
Yeah. The torn ACL, was that this year or was that last year?
I thought it was this year.
I can't remember if it was this year or last year. Cop 16 to pull this one up here, jumping in on YouTube. What about Parnell Motley? He played good versus the Chargers. Eric, what do you think?
He did, but he's a guy who's 5th or 6th on the depth chart, and you can't really bet on that. It's like last year. I know a lot of fans wanted Denver to bet on Deshaun Hamilton making a huge leap just because of a few games to end the season with the last 5 games that he had, or last 2 games that he had with Drew Lock, and Denver goes out and takes 2 receivers, 1st and 2nd. You just can't bet on huge progressions at certain players. He was undrafted for a reason. There's not saying there's not potential with him, but he's not a guy you bet on.
Yeah. No, I agree with that, and that was a big reason as to why Vic Fangio had to kind of change some things up for the defensive scheme, especially later down the end of the season where they went to more 2-man than that straight match quarters in cover 4. It was because the injuries at cornerback, and you're playing with guys like Parnell Motley out of Elijah Holder, who why the hell is he playing at the cornerback position? Kevin Tolliver got some playing time in there as well. I mean, it was just it's bad to have cornerback depth that bad, and that's why the Broncos need to have some more cornerbacks. And I understand, Joey on Twitch coming in here and saying, we need to have a veteran cornerback and you got to have another starter in the draft as well. Yeah, absolutely. You definitely need to. You can't count on Bryce Callahan to play 16 games. And Isang Bassi, even though he played very well in the slot and actually took the job from Michael Ojemudia as far as kicking him off the field, moving Bryce Callahan to the outside because Isang Bassi was playing so well in the slot and Ojemudia was struggling, especially as a tackler. Like, you got to build some more depth. Like, it's very obvious that the Broncos need to go in and get some more depth. And Parnell Motley could be a part of that as a developmental guy and a special teams player, but I don't want him on the field all the time. I can tell you that right now.
And just to throw this out there, you are correct. He did injure it, not 2020, 2019, and then he opted out for 2020. That's why I got my years mixed up with Andre Cisco. RC came in, said, "Don't draft injured players, Jake." But it's a lot more to it than that. It's not as black and white. It needs a lot more nuance to it, and a lot will depend on what happens with the medical exams. With Jake Butt, everybody knew that he was going to be have that redshirt year the first year, but nobody knew that he was going to have all those injuries come back. It's a risk that you take him. That's why you negate that risk by using a 5th or 6th round pick on some of these guys. Yeah. Guys who get cleared medically and everything like that there's no signs of lingering damage, that there's no concerns going forward, they still go early, and a lot of them end up failing because of injuries. Other ones, they end up going on and having good careers. It's not as black and white as saying, this player is hurt, so he's going to be a fail. It's just like saying, just because so-and-so player only has 23 starts means he's going to fail. It's not that black and white. Each player is an individual. Each prospect's an individual. And there's a lot of other variable factors into it as well.
And to kind of piggyback off of this really fast, don't draft injured players. Well, why don't you tell that to the Cleveland – and I understand where you're coming from here, RC. I really do. But why don't you tell that to the Cleveland Browns, who took Nick Chubb coming off of one of the worst knee injuries we've ever seen? And he's a superstar in this league, and he's playing football at an insanely high level. Now, Jake Butt, to go back to this a little bit, Jake Butt, when he was at Michigan, was widely considered, if not the top tight end prospect in that draft class, a top 2 or 3. Like, he was considered a first round player. And the torn ACL and the Fiesta Bowl, that dropped him down. And obviously, you have to worry about that. But there's a point where your evaluation of the player and the valuation and how you value that player meets up. And you're going to eventually cross that path. You're going to hit that one point. And for the Broncos, you have a first-round talent sitting there in the 5th round that's coming off of a torn ACL, so there's injury concerns there. If he comes back healthy and he can play at that first-round talent level, you now have an extremely good steal. And, I mean, people have that happen all the time. It's not, as Eric said, it's not black and white. There is some more nuance you have to understand with this. It is a great point. It is a great point that you need to not necessarily don't draft them, but also at the same time take that into your evaluation and understand that there could be some lingering effects, some long-term effects from the injuries that he definitely does have. So it's a great point. I see where you're coming from. Just open up a little bit more.
And before I get to this next comment, I want to say is I just want to mention the fact that I totally see you guys talking about Patrick in the chat, and man, you guys are speaking straight to our hearts right here. Because we have long touted the fact that we don't think that Tim Patrick will be back.
No.
That it makes sense for Denver to move on from him. So it's nice to see all that. But I got to grab this comment. K-Hop16. What do you guys think about what Cowherd said about Drew Lock? I have no words that I can say live without getting in trouble to express how stupid what Cowherd said was. Going off, there's plenty of reasons to not be supportive of Drew Lock, to have your doubts about him. But him being too cool for school or whatever it was he said, yeah, that ain't it, dog.
For those of you that are not watching the show live tonight, that are going to listen to this after the fact as a podcast, first off, thank you once again for joining in with us. You didn't see me literally like rubbing my face in my hands. This was such an abomination of a take. Too cool, too calm, not urgent enough. That doesn't actually hold water when you watch Drew Lock, because sometimes there seems to be a little bit too much urgency and he presses a little bit too much. I don't necessarily understand where he got this take. I think it's the rebuttal of his take that Drew Lock was going to play at a MVP caliber level this season, or was going to be the next second-year quarterback to win the MVP or something like that, what he said in like April of last year or May of last year, something like whatever it was. It's got to be that stark contrast to him. And to put it nicely, Colin Cowherd is a Colin Cow turd. Let's just put it that exactly. As Chase coming in here, thank you for saying it there even more nicely. Colin Cowherd just says things for views, and I'm not going to go any further on that because I want to say hello to. We got a Facebook user here. I'm not exactly sure who this is. I'll come back and see if I can find it in the Facebook stream on the Mile High Huddle Facebook group. For some reason, your name doesn't pop up on our side, and we can't see exactly who you are. So he says, smash that like button and share. We appreciate that. Love the show, guys, as well. He jumps in there to finish that out. Let's see here. A couple more.
There was one more comment here. Robert Kitchen said, Patrick and Bowles were the best players on our offense last year. Why let Patrick go? Well, first of all, Patrick is 27 years old and will be 28 in November. And so the odds of him continuing this up beyond another 2-3 years is unlikely. And he's a restricted free agent. You can slap a second-round tender on him, $2.4 million, something like that, against the cap for him if Denver can't move on from him, and then dangle him on the trade market, get an extra pick. I don't think a team will sign him away and give up a second-round pick, but I think you can get a third-round pick for him. This is a team that they're pretty loaded at wide receiver. They have Corton Sutton coming back, and so you got to figure out something there to unclog your clogged things that you're with your top three wide receivers. Yeah. You want KJ Hamler on the field. You want Jerry Jeudy on the field. You want Colton Sutton on the field. Tim Patrick there, he just kind of clogs that up. You want to better your fourth and fifth spot with over Deshaun Hamilton. Hope Tyree Cleveland steps up a little bit. So that's where you look at a day three wide receiver. Now the biggest thing for this is if Tim Patrick is kept beyond this year, who are you keeping, Cortland Sutton or Tim Patrick? Because they're both unrestricted free agents next year.
And another thing that you actually mentioned earlier when I was talking about how scheme fits and stuff like that don't necessarily apply to the wide receiver position. You're looking more for complementary skill sets. Cortland Sutton and Tim Patrick are almost exactly the same player. Like they have very similar skill sets here. Now, it does go back to which one would you rather keep? And obviously, Cortland Sutton coming off of that torn ACL. Tim Patrick had a breakout year last year and is widely considered one of the best second wide receivers as an available option on the open market this year, potentially if he does hit that. So you need to have that added extra versatility where you can get a KJ Hamler who brings that speed dynamic threat that can stretch the field vertically and horizontally. You've got to have a high quality route runner in the Jerry Jeudy as well. Cortland Sutton could be your deep ball threat as far as a one-on-one option in jump ball situations. Like, what are the complementary skill sets that you can add to that? Now, Patrick actually really developed as a route runner, and I'm not going to take anything away from what he did last year, but Cortland Sutton did as well. He was a really high-quality route runner in year two. Last year, it really kind of sucked. But at the same time, if you can get somebody else, and not that he's a realistic option, but if you can get a Jalen Waddle who also has a great route running ability and like stretch the field vertically, I'm all for it. I really am. Like, that's another complementary skill set that you can get there. And just with a obviously, we're keeping Sutton over Patrick. That's not even a question.
That's the point. That's the point that we're trying to make, is if they're both hitting free agency at the same time, you don't want that. You want to try to recoup something for Patrick, who he was an undrafted free agent.
Yep.
So now you got to strike here when the iron is hot in this case, not when they're both about to hit free agency, because what leverage you have, you lose. Yep. Now is the time that you move on from Tim Patrick. And it's nothing against Tim Patrick. I like him. He's done a lot for the Broncos over the last couple of years. It's nothing against him, but this isn't the NFL. That doesn't mean the National Fandom League. It's a National Football League, and it's a business. You got to look at it from a business aspect of it. Yeah,
no, and guys, you guys are bringing up some really great points. I understand exactly where you're coming from. I get it. It is hard to see some guys. There you go, Mr. Boggins.
I'm all for it.
Get Kyle Pitts at that point. I mean, sure. Absolutely. Now, spoiler alert, guys, I already have built up the worst case scenario for the Broncos, and we're going to talk about this. We're going to talk about this here in a couple of weeks. Come back to the Dove Valley Deep Divers podcast. You'll see what I'm talking about here. Worst case scenario is that all the quarterbacks are gone. You've got all the cornerbacks. So Patrick Surtain, Caleb Farley are both gone. Penei Sewell is gone. And you're sitting there at number 9, and you're looking directly in the face of Jamar Chase, Jalen Waddle, Kyle Pitts, and like Rashawn Slater. Like, that's a worst case scenario for the Broncos. And we're going to break that down for you guys and give you a little bit more nuance as to how that discussion goes. And I might actually change some of that stuff up, because you never know how things are like quickly going to evolve, especially after free agency. So it is a conversation you need to have. It's something to bring to the table. While that might not be a very high likely possibility of something like that happening, there is still a chance. So you're telling me there's a chance, right? Yes, there is still a chance. Eric, now before we get out of here,
I want to remind everybody about before you do the matters of business to get us out of here, about the competition we have going on. If you guys missed your chance to super chat this week, you have a chance next week where you can enter a competition to join us on the show and basically run a mock draft as the general manager with us as your scouting department. Again, you got a super chat. You have next week to do it as well. And then we'll be doing a random draw from everybody who super chats into it. The more super chats you have, the better your odds are of getting in. We'll get the list for who all came in tonight, and we'll add that and set that aside to be ready for next week. So yeah, you guys still have one more week left to enter for a chance to win. And hey, man, it'd be nice to put some faces to the names out there, and definitely be able to get your takes out there as well as part of the show, as you pick as the Broncos general manager what you would do.
Yeah, we're looking at March 5th for that show, guys. So, again, next week you have the opportunity to enter into the competition and hopefully get a chance to join us on the Dove Valley Deep Divers podcast. And honestly, tell us where you're from. Like, Broncos country is not a geographical location. It's a state of being. We've said that for years, for months on the Huddle Up Podcast Network. Like,
just look at who we have here on this. I'm in Alaska. Lance is in Wyoming. We have somebody in Utah, somebody in Seattle who is in Iowa. We have somebody in Kansas. We have somebody in London. We have somebody in Colorado, somebody on the East Coast. We have people all over the place. Yep. It really is. Broncos is not a geographical location. It is a state of being. And it's all us uniting, being fans of the Denver Broncos.
Yeah, look at this. We got somebody here in Pittsburgh. We got Let's Go Broncos. Andrew Switzer jumping in here from Oregon. Cop 16 jumping in here from New York. Dylan Von Arks, one of the moderators. Clifton Harris says on the East Coast. Dylan Von Arks, Cloverdale, California. Slim Slow, Portland, Oregon. Like La Junta, that's in Colorado. Like there's a bunch of different people from all over the world. Peter Middleton, another Dove Valley Deep Diver super chat superstar, comes in from Turkey every week, and he is always in on the YouTube comments as well, saying, "Hey, good show, guys. Love to see you guys." He jumps in all the time on the Dove Valley, on all of the podcasts. Everybody, I mean, it's not just Denver, it's not just the Colorado area. This place is worldwide. Tampa, Florida, I'm seeing here. New York, Piston Honda,
Scotland.
Well.
I forgot we have somebody from Scotland on this.
Yeah, we've got Keith Cummings is from Scotland. He's one of the top MHH reporters. I mean, he does a great job. This Broncos country is not a geographical location. It is a state of being. Mr. Boggins jumping in here from Tatooine. All right,
I see you. Is that one your home? Is that where you live, Mr. Boggins?
All right, now we got another super chat jumping in here. Hold on, really fast. I got to grab this. Don't want to leave any of our super chat superstars out in the cold. Deshaun jumping in here with the $5 super. Just showing some love. Appreciate that, man. And it looks like he's in Miami, according to his profile picture. Deshaun Baroob, I believe it. Don't murder me if I butchered your name. I apologize for that. Thank you for joining us, everybody. All of you for joining us on the Dove Valley Deep Divers podcast. That's going to do it for us tonight. Matters of business, as per usual. You guys can follow us both on Twitter. You can find me at Sanderson, MHH for Eric, at Erick Trickel. Also, while you guys are at it, follow at DVDD_pod. That's the easiest way to keep up with what is going on with the Dove Valley Deep Divers. Also, at Mile High Huddle, that's some other account. Breaking news and analysis, film breakdowns, opinion articles, anything regarding your Denver Broncos from your favorite Mile High Huddle personalities, including myself, Eric. You've got Nick and Carl, Luke Patterson, Zach Kelberman. James Campbell drops articles every now and again. We'll get Keith as well. Chad Jensen, the overlord of the Huddle Up clan, as it may be. Mile High Huddle. You guys are going to find all of that there as well. If you guys are on Facebook supporters, go to facebook.com/Mile High Huddle. Become a supporter. Click the blue Become a Supporter button to get Kelberman's Corner every Sunday at noon. We're trying to get something else figured out for some film breakdown stuff for you guys. Me and Eric are potentially calling it the 5280 view. That might be coming out here probably after the draft. We'll see if we can get something worked out. It's going to take a little bit of time to get this all set up, and we're both really busy working on studying the NFL draft. Guys, regardless, if you guys are not able to do anything like that, subscribe, like, and share. Subscribe wherever you guys are watching this show or listening to it after the fact as a podcast. Subscribe to Mile High Huddle. Like every video you guys see, and if you love it, share it. Also, guys, head over to huddleuppod.com. Hit the merch tent. Get yourself a hat. Get yourself a T-shirt. There's a face mask, a coffee cup, anything to suit your fancy, something for the guys, something for the gals, and you can get a onesie for your baby if you want it. So anyways, with that, Eric, before I get you to any last words, I got one thing that I want to put out there. And this is something that is obviously a hot button topic with the Denver Broncos. Now, obviously Deshaun Watson probably not on the market yet, but at the same time, the asking price currently potentially sits at 3 first-round picks, a second-round pick, a third-round pick, a fourth-round pick, and a couple of young defensive players. Does that remind you of any potential trade early? Like, that's a steep price. Does that remind you of any trade in NFL history, specifically in 2017?
Well, yeah, I already know that it's what the Philadelphia Eagles did would go up and get Carson Wentz, which I think that's actually too low for what they might be asking for Deshaun Watson. You have a chance for a shot-in-the-dark quarterback to get up to number 2, or you have a shot at a proven top 5 quarterback that's only 25 years old. I don't think it's good, and I think that Denver should go get Deshaun Watson. I'm definitely in that thing. Somebody said I like Star Wars. That is definitely true. If you can't tell, Star Wars, I've got Star Destroyer, I've got an AT-AT, Sebulba's Pod Racer, I've got the Twilight,
Pod Racer
I've got Jango Fett, I've got the Ghost, Slave One. So got to have a bunch of different ones.
Richie Rich coming in here, and he has the greatest idea for the next merchandise item that needs to go up on huddleuppod.com. Raider diapers that a baby can poop into. I need some of those. My 6-month-old son right now needs some new diapers, and I'm all about it. Richie, thanks, man. We appreciate it.
And then Trevor, I wanted to say something to Trevor real quick and to Kai and everything. I work security at a courthouse. I'm very open about that on Twitter and everything. And I was bullied a lot through school. And I have security clearance to work as a contractor for a state courthouse. And the kid who bullied me, I see coming into the courthouse all the time, and it's not because he works there. Tell Kai to keep his head up. Things will get better. Yeah. And just there's a lot of reasons why kids bully, and none of them are good. Don't want to get into them, all of them, but hope nothing before the best, but the best for Kai and everything. And if they're bullying him because he's a Broncos fan, man, then shame on those kids and shame on those kids' parents.
So all you need to do is you need to tell him that the Broncos still have more Super Bowl trophies in their existence than the Chiefs do. And they also have more Lamar Hunt trophies than the Chiefs do. And that's a pretty big insult to Lamar Hunt, considering Lamar Hunt used to be the owner of the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, guys, with that, we got to get out of here. Eric, any last words? We out of here? Are we good to go?
I think we're good to go. Rich, the lightsaber hasn't come in yet, but when it definitely does, it'll definitely be all over my Twitter. I'll probably change my profile picture to have that because I love a lightsaber more than my daughter, apparently. That's not true.
Oh my God, guys. I can't do it. I can't comment on that. I'm done. I'm out. Y'all stay safe. Take care. Have a great rest of your weekend. Mile high salute to our super chat superstars. Same time, same place next week, Friday, 6 p.m., 8 p.m. Eastern. We'll see you guys next time. Thanks. Take care.